All right, good. We're rolling. Hello, everyone. Hope you've been enjoying the Is this even on? Yo, can you? I feel like I sound the same. Test. Oh my God, it's working. Good afternoon, everyone. I know we're getting closer to the end of the con, so I'll try not to go over because the rewards reception is coming up at 5. I know we're all tired. I know this is an hour-long talk. Buckle up, okay? I'm sorry. It's so long. But today's talk is about hacking multi-factor authentication. I'm assuming you guys can read, so like we're all good here, right? Yeah, I'm all about literacy, because oh, wait a second. Oh my God, my laser pointer works. I love that. All right, so I can do the whole laser pointer thing. Cool. All right, so I guess we're just gonna go ahead and get started here. Right? So who am I? Right? Because who is this person standing in front of you? I'm not just some random person here. I am semi-qualified to talk about this, maybe not really, but I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am. So who am I? Who is this? I'm sure a lot of you have met me already at the con, or if you're online, you have no idea who I am, right? So I'm a senior identity and access management consultant at CDW Corporation. So I deal a lot with implementing the pings and the octas and implementing MFA solutions and just having a good time with clients. You could call me a subject matter expert, right? I've been in the field for maybe almost half a decade. I don't know, it sounds better than 3-4 years, but there you go. I'm a certified BSer, right? I have a Bachelor of Science in Cybersecurity and Information Assurance, okay? And I've been in IT since 2018, and there's a little picture of an ASCII cat. I'm also a mother of 3 animals, not children. Just don't want to freak any of you out there, okay? But yeah, mother of 3 animals, and they all 2 dogs and a cat, and the cat just acts like a dog because it's been raised by dogs. So she's like a little kitten right now, and she's a literal dog that just shits in a litter box, okay? Look, I'm trying not to curse. Right. I'm trying as a speaker, I'm trying to make sure I don't corrupt the youth. So I told myself for every time I cursed, I would donate $5 to Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. So can I please have someone keep track of how many times I let it slip? Yep, our helper here. Thank you. Shout out to our helper, right? Okay, and here's a big disclaimer. This talk is just for fun. This doesn't have anything to do with what I do for my day job. I didn't do it because CDW was like, you need to make a talk about hacking MFA. No, I am a systems implementer. I implement Okta and Ping Identity a lot for clients, and I'm going to move more into Azure, learn more about the Azures and the ForgeRocks or whatever. Got to learn everything, right? As a consultant, I did all of this on my own free time, just out of curiosity, so that I could educate people on the risks of the MFA solutions that they implement, so that if someone asks me well, we have MFA, right? So everything's good. We're all good now, right? We don't have to worry about anything. Yeah, no, that's totally wrong. And I just want to be able to educate people about it. So there we go. Big disclaimer. And do not use this talk to make decisions for your organization, because I am not that person you talk to. Okay, do not. If you do, not my problem. Okay, I'm just here to talk about some dumb technical stuff with MFA. Do not, disclaimer, do not talk to your organization, make decisions based on your risk appetite, and thoroughly research things, and don't just make decisions based off of one random talk you saw on the internet, please, okay? So I'm sure we all know what passwords are, right? You enter in your username, you enter in your password, you're in. There's a problem with them, right? They work, they help make sure that somebody can't just access my account, or I can't just access your account. I mean, supposedly, right? But there's a couple caveats with passwords. So for one thing about passwords, right? And we can't talk about MFA without talking about passwords, is they get breached a lot. They get breached a lot. This is a big number. I don't even know how to say it. 8.4 billion. Am I stupid? Is that right? I don't know. Yeah, but have been breached. And this is a small estimate. This is just literally from one article that I looked at. And honestly, this number is probably so much bigger. If you tallied up all the password breaches that have ever happened in human history, and you try to figure out how big this number was, yeah, this is a pretty big number. I don't know about you, but that's a lot of zeros right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 zeros. I mean, wow. That's a lot. So chances are, if you've ever made an online account and you've put in a password, it may have been breached. And, like, just like, back in the day where we didn't think about password security and your password was like kitten1234 or something, like, definitely, unless you're always using a password manager and making everything super, super random or super hard to guess. If it's a more common password, like from ye old days, it's probably been breached. Or it's in a password breach somewhere, to be honest with you. Right. So what makes them vulnerable other than the fact that, like, they get out there, right? Your username and password gets out there. Well, for one thing, password reuse is very common. If you are watching this on Zoom or on Whova, and I encourage you to all ask questions, even if you're online, I wish you guys were here. I miss your presence. Okay. Password reuse is common for the average user, for the average person, because I don't know, it's just easier. People don't want to, like, think that hard when they try to access their services. Okay. You know what they want to do? They just want to get in and do what they need to do. So a lot of people that are more non-technical, like maybe you have like a friend or a sibling or a parent or literally just someone not in the information security field that doesn't think about information security, they probably have a reused password somewhere. And that makes it more susceptible to end up in a password breach, right? I mean, that's just a fact of life. The more you reuse something, statistically speaking, the more likely it's going to get breached, okay? And they're also easily guessed depending on complexity. A lot of tools out there that even if your password has not been in a breach, they'll still replace characters, it'll still add numbers, do all this fun stuff. I don't know, I didn't develop these tools, don't ask me, but they can be easily guessed depending on complexity, like kitten1234, sunshine22, summer 2023. Those kinds of passwords can be very easily guessed, or even like Bible verses or something. Can I recite a Bible verse off the top of my head? No, but I guarantee you there's a Bible verse that's been in a breach somewhere. And also too, insecure storage mechanisms, okay, they tell, the general consensus is don't store your damn passwords in plain text in a random database somewhere that intern made up like 5 years ago, but I guarantee you there's a lot of companies that still do that. You should probably store the password hashes instead, and then those hashes can still get breached. And it's just I'm trying not to curse so much because I need to protect my wallet, even though I love Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, okay? But yeah, insecure storage mechanisms. Somebody breaks into a database that holds all those passwords or holds all those password hashes and they get a hold of them. Great, that's gold, especially if you use an insecure hashing mechanism. Like if you're still using MD5 for some reason, Miss Ma'am, okay, they're getting into your stuff, okay? Oh, and sorry, didn't mean to miss that. This is an example of a really popular tool called Girl, excuse me, what are you doing? Okay. A popular example of a tool, John the Ripper, right? It's used a lot in CTFs. If you've ever played CTFs, this is a very popular password cracking tool. If you're trying to break into like a remote server or something like that using SSH, there's Hydra, I think it's called, that tool. Yeah, lots of tools out there. You can even write your own little crappy Python script if you want to. I've done it before. Password cracking is not inherently that difficult if if you're cool with just like trying to brute force something. You know what I mean? Like that's just how it is. Passwords are inherently, they work, but let's be honest, they're like not that great. Okay. Literally, if you just Google password breaches on Google, there's going to be new news articles that come up saying, oh yeah, there's this password breach. There's this password breach. There's that password breach. This company, all their passwords are out there now, and you need to change your password. There's definitely been instances where I'm using an online service and I've been told like, hey, your password has been kind of breached. Like, we need you to change your password now, like directly from the online service, where it's like, girl, you need to change your password now. We're not letting you until you change your password. Okay, it's annoying, right? But it happens. They happen all the time. I guarantee you there's one happening right now. Someone is doing some evil stuff right now and they're trying to make a password breach happen right now. And those are just the ones you hear about. There's also this great resource called SecLists on GitHub that literally, if you can look, it's not that big here, but you can see they have cracked hashes. They have different passwords. They have password lists where you can just take this list of passwords and just throw them at an online service and see what works. And this can all be automated. You know, you can use automated tools. Like it's It's really not that hard. I'm sure if you pulled aside, like, honestly, 12-year-olds nowadays can be pretty smart. Let's be real. If but like if you pulled aside someone super non-technical and just showed them some of the steps on like how to try to brute force a password or try to do a credential stuffing attack, things like that, they could probably do it. There's so many tools out there that make it easier to do these things. It's also a really great website to check if your password has been in a breach called haveibeenpwned.com. And we take a look here. We search for password, right? Check this out. Oh, that's a big number too. 9,636,205 times. I don't think I'm saying that number right. But that password, right? And I'm guarantee you, I mean, a lot of services don't let you use password as a password anymore, but I guarantee you, like, there's some internal business services that do, other terribly secured online services. Like, it's a problem, okay? Password has been reused so many times as a password, like the word password, that it's been breached over 9 million times. So yeah, definitely don't use password as your password. Like you might think you're being clever, but really you're not at all being clever. That's just being stupid. And look, we all make questionable decisions, and I don't like to judge people for the decisions, but if you use password as a password, like I will judge you because you should know better by now in 2023. Oh yeah, and bad guys can use this tool too, right? If they want to know if a password has been in a breach and they want to try to look for different word lists, things like that, yeah. They can just enter in the password into haveibeenpwned.com. I mean, let's face it, any tool that us, I guess, quote unquote, good guys or defenders or whatever you want to call us, I don't know what you want to call us, like that we're not actively trying to just like ruin people's lives and steal money and things like that. Any tool that we can use, a lot of times people with more malicious intentions can also use that tool. So just keep that in mind wherever you go in your career. So yeah, passwords, we've talked about them. They seem like they're kind of lame in a way, like they've got a lot of problems with them, right? So there's some password mitigations that we can try to enforce, right? So, ooh, that's kind of blocked off. So complexity requirements work, but there's a catch, right, with complexity requirements. So first of all, end users find them very annoying. As an end user myself, I find them annoying. You know why? Because I'll go on one website and I'll use my password manager, and the password manager generates a password and the website's like, yeah, this works great. Your password is so strong, whatever that means, right? And then I'll go to website letter B and I'll use the same password manager, and letter B is like, your password is trash. You can't use that password because you don't have a special character, or you can't use this special character. What? Like, so imagine me, someone in IT, someone that knows to use a password manager or prefers to, and I find it annoying. So can you imagine like your grandma or something that's like trying to use Facebook and their bank and like all the, like, it's annoying. Okay. The password complexity requirements are so annoying. And I've definitely experienced non-technical, like just anybody in my life find them annoying. And they're also different for nearly every application, okay? Like it just pains me to see that nobody can decide, and then also too, I'm sure you've heard that like, I think NIST has said like don't force users to change their passwords, don't force users to make them super complex. But then everybody else is like, NIST, you guys are stupid. We're still gonna keep those password requirements. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like nobody can really agree on them. Right. And also too, even if you make this beautiful, strong password with lots of different characters and it's 60 characters long and they're random characters and you got numbers, you got lowercase letters, uppercase letters, and special characters, guess what? People might still try to reuse them. It's true. Even if you have a really like, even if you have a password that's like super hard to crack, doesn't stop you from reusing it. Right. And here's just some examples, right, of different password complexity requirements from different services that I've seen out in the wild. And it's like, can you imagine just being a regular user, just trying to use a couple different services? Like, I find this like annoying. So I can't imagine the average user that we're trying to protect, right, how they feel about this sort of thing. So now let's talk about the password complexity debate. Talked about this a little bit, right? So some sources say if you just use more characters, then you don't necessarily have to throw in special characters and uppercase and lowercase letters. Like if you had like a really long passphrase that was like 30 characters, then it's like, great, that's hard to crack, you know. But then some sources say, well, you can also just use less characters and have your password be more complex, and then like just have the special characters, the letters, the uppercase and lowercase letters, and the numbers. And even if it's shorter, that's still harder to crack, right? And also too, do we really need to reset our passwords? Like I said, NIST was like, yo, end users find that annoying. Don't make them reset their passwords because it just causes fatigue. And then other places are like, actually, I don't agree with that, and we're not going to listen to you, okay? And in any case, just don't reuse your passwords. No matter how you feel about the password complexity debate, and I'm sure you could debate for hours, and I'm not here to debate with anyone today. It is the end of the day. I'm way too tired for that. Just don't reuse your passwords, guys. Like, just don't. Just don't do it. It's bad. So yeah, let's talk about password managers. They're great. I love my password manager. They treat me so good. Okay, they generate passwords for me. They save my credentials, and supposedly it's secure. I mean, I don't know. You put a lot of trust in a password manager when you use it, right? Because they literally have access to everything. And the pain is like, if you forget your master password, well, it's like, oh, yeah, you lost like access to like all your accounts, and you're just like not having a good day anymore, right? So I like password managers. They're great. A lot of web browsers now come with password managers embedded in them. Apple has their own password manager, so it's great if you're like an Apple Power user, right? And you use Mac and iPhone and iPad and whatever, and you can just boop your passwords in, and it's super convenient. So yeah, password managers are great. Oh my gosh, until they get hacked. Wow. Because remember, nothing is unhackable, right? So I'm not trying to bonk on LastPass here, but if you go on the LastPass Wikipedia page, they have so many security incidents, and the shame is that people trusted them. They trusted them with their sensitive information, and then this happened, right? So you have to be careful of the password manager that you use. You have to think about like, well, has it been through a lot of security breaches, or like who owns that information? You know, because technically, I mean, they can see, can't they see what you put in there? I don't know. You always have to think about like who you're giving your keys to the kingdom to. Now, let's talk about some real life password quotes, okay? These quotes about passwords are from real people in my life from non-technical backgrounds, okay? Here's what they say. I am so effing tired of changing my password all the time. Real quote. I use the same password for everything. It's easier. Yeah, I'm not doing that in reference to using a password manager. These are all things I've heard from real people in my life. And as a information security professional, does it pay me? Yes, but you have to accept that not everything in life is perfect, okay? But real life password quotes, these are from real people. So passwords, we've talked about them, right? It's like, wow. So you're telling me that like passwords really aren't all that great, that there's a lot of debate over passwords, and nobody can really come to a consensus on how we need to manage our passwords, or how complex they need to be, or the length, or anything. Nobody can agree on anything. And it's awful. But honestly, just talking about passwords like hurts my little brain. Like, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. People get very heated about this topic, and I have seen it happen before. And, but now, let's talk about multi-factor authentication, right? It's an extra layer on top of your passwords. So therefore, we must be saved, right? Because multi-factor, more than one factor. I hope that's like obvious. I don't know, right? So with multi-factor authentication, here's kind of what it looks like, right? You get your password, right, to authenticate. You enter your username and password, but then there's usually another prompt that's like, yo, I want an OTP, a one-time passcode, right? Or a biometric, usually. Those are the most common. There's other forms of additional factors that we could talk about, but we're just trying to keep it simple here, right? And then you get in, you win, right? So look, password, something you know. That's one kind of factor, right? That says like, okay, I swear I am who I say I am, put my hands up. This is Mugen, like this is me trying to log in, I'm cool. But then, someone steals your password, right? And then they can also put their hand up and be like, hey, the password is kittens1234, like I'm totally Mugen, like it's cool, man, let me in, okay? But now we have another factor to authenticate who you are, to get into your stuff, right? Something you have, a one-time passcode, right? That changes usually every 30 seconds, right? You've probably seen authenticator apps or SMS messages that these OTPs expire, or something you are, such as a biometric. You see fingerprint a lot, Face ID. Those are the two biggest ones that I've seen. If you want to get really hardcore, you can start scanning people's retinas. I'm surprised no one's tried to do like a spit test or something. I'm like, I'd love to see that. That would be that make me really uncomfortable, but I'm sure someone's thought about it, right? So let's talk about some common authentication methods, right? For MFA, like for adding that extra layer, right? We have OTPs, one-time passcodes, SMS and authenticator apps. We've got push notifications. Hell yeah, something you have. You open up your app and it's like, hey, is this you trying to log in? And then you can be like, yeah, that's me. And you can press yes and everything's fine and dandy, right? And of course you have biometrics, your little fingerprint, you tap your little finger on the button and it's like, oh yeah, that's you. Okay, you can get in. Or you just look at something with a dead stare in your face after a long day, right? And that also lets you in on top of your password, of course, right? And here's just some examples of what those look like. You've got in the left, Google Authenticator, you've got SMS in the middle, and then you've got an example of Touch ID. Okay, to be honest with you, does anybody like use their index finger for like Touch ID, like on their phone? Oh, okay, never mind. We have a psychopath in the room. Because I feel like everybody uses their thumb. I don't know, but so like that's just a weird image to me. But oh yeah, that shows a generational gap. What's up? One person at a time. Want both to talk though. Let's go. You had your hand up.
My laptop.
Yeah, laptop, yes, but like on your phone though. Yeah. Okay, but you do?
Because mine is a little spot right here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some of I think Samsung phones, they have the fingerprint reader on the side. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And if you have like a bigger thumb. Okay, never mind. Okay, I'm wrong. Whatever. Okay. All right, so now let's talk about some challenges with implementing MFA though. And this is just from my experience, what I've seen working with a lot of clients, also working internal IAM. Just because somebody, and okay, CDW, please don't kill me for this, okay? Look, just because someone sells you a solution and tells you it's great, that's great, whatever. However, implementing it will always come with its challenges. And here's how. First, you have end user friction. So if you go from being an organization that doesn't have MFA, right, to being an organization that does have MFA, guess what? Your end users are going to be annoyed because now there's an extra step that they have to do in order to get in and do their job. I've literally seen it. I have seen instances where I've worked with clients and then they've had employees be like, I'm not installing that app because I don't want to do it. And then the people that I'm working with my client have to literally go to that person's upper management to yell at that employee and be like, this is company policy. You need to do it now or else you're going to get in trouble. Right? Definitely have seen that a lot. And also too, just at least when you first implement your MFA solution, there's going to be increased help desk tickets because let's face it, there's always going to be for a lot of organizations, there's just going to be people that like don't know how to use a phone or just have trouble. Or like if something goes wrong with an application that you set up MFA for, and it's the application's fault and not the MFA solution's fault, the employee is going to be like, it's the new thing's fault. It's, and I'm not happy. So I'm going to say it's the MFA's fault when it's really not. I've seen that so many times. Or even software vendors do it too, yo. I'm being honest with you, trying to implement the MFA with an application and the software vendor's like, well, it's your problem. It's not our problem, even though we have a poorly written application. Like, no, it's your problem. And it's terrible. And it causes increased help desk tickets. You also have to think about training your help desk on administering that MFA solution and being able to train the employees on how to implement it, right? We also have application compatibility and migration. So a lot of MFA solutions also provide SSO capabilities as well. Single sign-on, where like you have a cute little portal where you can just log in once and then click on the application and then you're into that application. So oftentimes when I've seen an MFA solution implemented, such as Ping, Identity, or Okta, it also comes with application migrations, and those can be so chaotic and such a headache if you don't have the right people running it, because you have to coordinate times, you have to consider like, is this app business critical? What does the downtime look like? And usually when you set up SSO for an application like with SAML or OIDC or whatever, right, it's pretty quick. It just works. But then sometimes the application side, right? The software vendor side, they need time for things to replicate on their end. And that's usually where the downtime comes in. And then if you're trying to secure homegrown applications, right? Which I know a lot of organizations are moving away from homegrown applications because let's face it, they're a pain to deal with. And you have to maintain the code and things like that. And it's just terrible, right? You have to think about, well, can this application even support the use of MFA on it? Like, what if it doesn't support SSO? So I can't put it on the company portal. Okay, so then can I just secure the application directly with my MFA solution? It really depends on the application, what it's written in, what libraries are available in order for you to do that. Like, yeah, it's tough, you know? And here's just some of the big access management vendors, right? That also provide MFA as a solution, like their own MFA solution. You got OneLogin, Ping Identity, Okta, and ForgeRock, just to name a few, but there's so many out there. You know, there's so many out there. So let's talk a little bit about MFA bypass. What are some of the fun ways that we can, you know, sort of bypass MFA, right? So we have insecure components, right? So just consider you can have a lot of things locked down with your setup, right? But if you have just that one little component, like that one little server that's set up like on the worldwide internet that for some reason has admin access to like your whole company, well, great. What was even the point of implementing your MFA solution? Because people can just get in another way. We also have physical device access. So usually if someone like, say you have a laptop and you got MFA, oh my God, the sign. See, you have MFA set up on your laptop, but then you lose it or it gets stolen or whatever, you know, if somebody has physical access to the device, it's not yours anymore. Just being completely honest. Like there's ways if people do enough finagling that they can bypass some forms of MFA. And then we have setup keys, Google and Microsoft Authenticator. So this is a really interesting one and it deals with the QR codes that you see when you are asked to set up Google and Microsoft Authenticator. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And of course, you got the one-time passcode, everything's good and dandy and fine, but like I can just ask for it, yo, like that's not hard, you know? And then we also have MFA bombing and fatigue. This is a more recent attack, but it's a fun one, you know? And then of course we have the inherent insecurities of SMS, which, yeah, we'll talk about SMS, don't you worry. Okay, so first let's talk about physical device access. If somebody has access to your device, well, it's probably not your computer anymore, and here's why. So it's a little bit game over-ish if somebody gets access to your device, right? You know, we have biometric attacks. We have cold boot attacks, right? So here's an example of a biometric attack. There have been instances of people attacking Touch ID by just making like a gelatin fingers, or this is a really sophisticated one I thought just looked cool, right? Where researchers just printed somebody's fingerprint like on some silicone and managed to get it through that way. There's plenty of ways, right? If you can somehow, it's a little difficult to do, but it's definitely possible. If you can lift a fingerprint, if you can find someone's fingerprint and then replicate that on a surface that is close enough to the human finger, then yeah, you know, you can probably get in. Or I've definitely, and I'm not sure if they've updated Face ID since then, but you know, you probably heard of stories when Face ID first came out, right? Where people could unlock each other's phones, like if they looked similar enough. Honestly curious to see how Face ID works with like twins. Like what if you have like an estranged identical twin that tries to steal your phone? Like would they be able to get in? I'm not really sure. I wish I researched that more before this talk. And then we also have cold boot attacks, right? Compressed can of air, take someone's laptop, force shut it down, take the RAM out, take a can of compressed air, make it really cold. And what that does is that locks in the encryption keys in the RAM to give you enough time in order to grab them. And there you go. You have access to someone's device. You've passed their drive encryption, no problem. So now let's talk about setup keys for Google and Microsoft Authenticator. Did you know that they don't expire? Scan that. If you scan that right now, if all of you, and I'm not asking you to just scan some random QR code that you saw on a security talk. However, if you scanned this code on your phone, if multiple of you scanned it, you would all get the same OTP because these setup keys don't expire. So my suggestion is don't save your setup keys. I think I couldn't find this Reddit post, but there was a Reddit post somewhere that was like, yeah, I lost access to all my stuff because I saved my setup keys in my email and someone got into my email and got all my setup keys. So even though I had MFA, they still got access to my stuff. So be careful with your setup keys. Or I guess if someone was really like weird and stalkerish and they were like shoulder surfing you, I guess that's another thing that they could try. But you know, it's something that you should think about. Don't save your setup keys. Just don't. Do not do that. They do not expire for Google and Microsoft Authenticator, or I guess any authenticator app that uses a QR code, because this is essentially like the key, like the secret key that is used to help generate that OTP. So now let's talk about social engineering. I don't have your OTP. Fine, no problem. I'm gonna just ask for it, right? Commonly used with email or SMS. And this is an example of a text message that people have gotten. You know, and it basically just says, we noticed a suspicious login. We're going to send you an OTP. Please respond to this message with the 6-digit code that you will be receiving soon. Definitely to mitigate this sort of attack, a lot of companies have been like, yo, we will not ask for your OTP. You know, like if they text it to you, right? They're like, we will not ask for your OTP from another number. Please don't do it. But this is just an example of social engineering your OTP, and malicious people have definitely done it like plenty of times, right? And this is a fun one. People have developed a one-time passcode Telegram bot. And what this bot does is it will call somebody, right? And literally make it like a robocall and ask for their OTP. And that's another way that people have gotten OTPs, is you can literally just automate it. You can have a bot do the social engineering for you. Isn't that fun, but also like terrifying, right? Be careful of the calls that you get, right? Claiming to be like your bank or whatever, so on and so forth, right? And also too, can you really trust insiders? Let's be real, right? You know, and this is kind of, I guess, just from my personal experience, you know, when we talk about like insecure components in an organization, I once worked in an organization where even though they had the proper protections to prevent email spoofing from outside the organization, inside they did not. There were email servers that just blindly trusted anybody. And I literally sent like an email as the CISO, like as the information security officer, like the chief information security officer, like I impersonated him and it looked real. And the only way that you could have told that that email was fake was by checking the email headers, which who does that? Who, like the random, okay, yes, you, but you're at an information security conference, so you don't count, okay? You do not count. However, you know, the regular user, like your accounting or HR person probably isn't going to trust it. And, you know, I'm sure there are ways that if you're, you know, perimeter is super secure, but then your inside's not as secure and somebody gets in and they impersonate like a help desk person, right, through their email or through some other forms, or maybe they're a really good voice actor and they can just like, you know, make themselves sound like a help desk person. Like, you know, be careful of insiders too, right? Think about that when you're thinking about like social engineering OTPs. So now let's talk about MFA bombing. This is a really fun one. I really like this one. This enables you to be super annoying, and that's my specialty. I love just annoying the hell out of people, right? So MFA bombing attacks, what are they? First, you start off with a compromised username and password, right? And then you spam push notification prompts. So push notifications are great, right? They do mitigate some of the problems with OTPs. However, sometimes your MFA solution doesn't implement rate limiting, right? Or so you just spam them. You just keep sending them and sending them and sending them and sending them on that user's login screen. And then eventually the user gets annoyed and accepts. This is an example of what a prompt looks like. And sometimes, you know, that end user, if they keep getting push notification prompts, they might just honestly think it's like a fluke. Because sometimes flukes do happen. I was literally messing with an MFA solution, like just in my free time, trying to like set up a new MFA device. And for some reason, it just didn't go through. Like sometimes bugs, like very rarely, but they do happen. So the end user might just think like, wow, this is annoying and I want it to stop. Or maybe it's just a bug and like, I just got to accept it and it's going to be fine. And yeah, they accept it and you get in. So here's an example of this attack in action. If it's going to play. Bro. Okay, so yeah, look, bad guy, right? Got their username and password. They're like, oh no, I don't have the MFA, but that's fine. I'll just keep sending push notifications, right? So this user, like, they're just trying to like do their thing on their phone and have a good time. So they don't accept it because they're like, yeah, that's not me. But check this out. They're going to go into their notes, journal a little bit, right? Check that out. Look, they're getting another push notification. Now the user's confused. And look, now they're getting another one and another one and another one. And they're like, yo, I'm so annoyed right now. And at some point, they just cave in and accept it. It's a fun attack, definitely a fun attack. And now I've seen mitigations where I know Microsoft doesn't even let you do push notifications. They literally just say like, okay, on your desktop, we're showing you this number. Press that number on your phone to show that's really you. And that's an example of a mitigation against them. But you can see that, like, look, I just keep sending them. And then eventually at some point, the user caves in and accepts, and the hacker is in, or the bad guy's in. Right? Fun. So now let's talk about SMS, you know. Oh, SMS, I think we're all exhausted by it by now. But for those of you that don't know, we can bypass SMS MFA in a couple ways, right? So we have eavesdropping using the SS7 protocol. It's the protocol that SMS runs on. It's inherently insecure. You do need more sophisticated equipment to do this. And I wanted to try it out myself, but the little thingy, like the receiver that I think literally acts as like a little cell phone tower, like it tricks your phone into thinking that that's cell phone tower. It was like $500. And I was like, never mind, right? And then, oh gosh. You know what? Why get that fancy machine to eavesdrop on SMS when you can just SIM swap someone? And I actually have a story about this that I'm like so embarrassed to talk about. I think we all have those embarrassing stories from our college days, right? Or a lot of us do, unless you're like a saint or whatever, and you never have made a bad decision in your life. But I was working at a cell phone store as a retail associate, soul sucking, right? At a mall, at a dead mall. They were always yelling at us about getting sales, but when nobody walks into your store, like, how are you supposed to get sales? And they're asking us like post on social media and stuff on our free time. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So I'm tired. I'm so tired, man. I'm tired. I was studying late last night for an exam. It's the morning. And someone malicious sees this and they come in and they're like, hey, I lost my phone. I'm on vacation. I need a new one now. So I'm like, bet. Cool, I'll hook you up. So he shows me his ID, looks legit. He's a really nice guy, seems really friendly, you know, and so I give him a new phone with that number. And it turns out later that he claimed to be somebody that he was not, and he just had a very convincing fake ID. And usually these kinds of attacks target people with extremely good credit scores that can sort of do that sort of phone financing where you have no down payment. Right? You know how like you try to finance a phone at like the cell phone store, and then if your credit's like not that great, you'll have a down payment, right? To start financing it. Well, this victim did not, you know, so yeah. And it was like, wow. And then I get an angry phone call from that customer later being like, hey, that was not me. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, but literally, that's an example of a SIM swapping attack where people commit fraud and they try to get iPhones to sell on the black market. They'll steal your phone number too. They don't care, right? And then of course we have SMS spoofing. There used to be like APIs out there. Like this used to be part of like Kali Linux back in the day when it was called Backtrack, and you could easily spoof someone's SMS, right? Like spoof their number. I think this was featured in Mr. Robot actually, but they don't have that anymore. I think because all the APIs that used to let that happen are broken, or I have no idea what happened. I couldn't get it to work. And to get SMS spoofing to work now, you need more sophisticated equipment that's like super expensive that I just couldn't get access to. And of course, you know, fake IDs, right, are a thing that you use if you're trying to carry out a SIM swapping attack. You can buy fake IDs off the internet. Literally, you just search fake ID, and this is like one of the results that come up, right? And here's an example of what they call a stingray. It's what you can use to eavesdrop on SMS, you know, right? Sorry, let me go back to that real quick. Yeah, that's what a stingray looks like, okay? And now here's the fun stuff. Let's go phishing. You can do it. I did it. Am I a hacker? No. Am I super like coding? Like, can I like read assembly and like spit up a reverse shell and do all this crazy stuff? No. But you too can go phishing. for only $20 or less. And this is not the kind of phishing attack where you set up like a crappy web page where you just copy the HTML and like make a fake web page. No, it's not. It's a little more sophisticated than that. It uses something called a reverse proxy, which basically just proxies the user to the real website. So you don't even have to do any of that, right? So here's the recipe for evil to go phishing. First, you need a convincing domain name. You can definitely find them. Here's a domain that I found, Microsoft.com. Also, too, I saw really interesting posts about LinkedIn about how you have to be careful of certain URLs because they might contain like Cyrillic, C-Y-R, Cyrillic letters in the URL. However, and I wanted to post that LinkedIn post because it was kind of wrong because I did actually try to do that and like register like Microsoft.com with a Cyrillic O, but it doesn't quite render in your address bar correctly. And that's why those kinds of domains are not all eaten up because it doesn't render correctly. It kind of comes up as like XYZ or something like that. And I mean, that makes sense. You know, that's why you don't see a lot of websites with like crazy characters outside of the typical like ASCII character set, right? Like just like your English letters, basically, like even like Asian websites, like in Japan, like even Japanese websites, all the URLs are still like English, in English instead of in like Japanese characters. And I think it's just with how, you know, things were set up back then, and it just hasn't really changed to like be able to render crazy characters or different characters in a URL in your web browser address bar. So after you get your domain name, you'll also need a web server on the internet, right, in order to host your phishing evil fun. And then you need to get the user to click on a link and authenticate. And I will be showcasing the domain name and the web server today, but I will leave getting the user to click on the link and authenticate as an exercise up to you. There's this program called GoPhish that I haven't really gotten to use, but it's supposed to help you carry out phishing campaigns. So I encourage you to try that on your own, or just think about like, how would you get someone to click on a random link, right? And in this example, we're going to be using a combination of Namecheap and AWS in order to achieve our evil, right? So, and also something called EvilJinx 2, which I forgot to add here, right? That's the software they're going to be running on our web server. But this is the victim point of view, right? We have a legit looking login page, a legit looking URL. And mind you, this is after the user clicks, right? And we have the padlock, right? Little padlock. Usually people have been told like, always look for the padlock on your web page. That means it's safe and secure, right? But is it really? You know, right? So you have your login page, your URL, and your padlock. Okay, and then from the attacker point of view, right, once that user logs in, clicks on that URL that you've generated, you get the username and the password. And this is fun. When you check that padlock, right? And say you're just like an average user and you check that padlock and it says it's verified by Let's Encrypt. And then you Google Let's Encrypt, you're like, oh yeah, Let's Encrypt is legit. Because Let's Encrypt is a service that just lets you get certificates for your website like for free, right? And just remember what I said, anything that the good people can use, the bad people can use too. And this is an example, right? The software that we're using, EvilJinx 2, literally just pulls a certificate from Let's Encrypt, it requests one and gets one and makes everything look fine to the end user. So here's an example of what it looks like in action. So if you want to see the Outlook example, you can check out my talk on my website, but I felt frisky and I wanted to try GitHub. So that's what we're doing today. Okay, so check this out. You playing? All right, user's gonna enter in the URL, they clicked on it, right? So now they're gonna enter in their username to GitHub. This also works with Outlook as well as of a couple months ago. But this is a little more recent, right? So they're gonna enter in their username, they're gonna enter in their password, which they've made like super secure, right? You know, they generated it, whatever. And here's a fun thing. If you try to use a security key here though, and we'll talk more about this later, I just wanted to showcase this here. Doesn't work. Okay, fine, whatever. So I'm just gonna use my backup method, whatever. Okay, however, so security key doesn't work fine. Okay, maybe it's a fluke, I don't know. But now, I'm gonna enter in my OTP. And you can't really see it there, but that is not github.com up there. Oh, girl, are you not playing now? Oh, I guess that was the end of my video. Awkward. Let me try that again. Excuse me, Miss Ma'am, you're not playing now? So basically what it shows, and You can see an example on my, oh, yeah, let's go back. Yeah, there we go. I don't know what it was doing. Thank you. AV people to the rescue. We need to respect our AV people more. They need more credit. They make everything work. And we just come over here and talk and then take everything for granted. And look, it's still at that fake URL. And this user can just go in and browse GitHub and they are the wiser. They have no idea, right? If they don't carefully check that address bar, they can just browse GitHub like it was nothing because it's a reverse proxy. It sits in front of, you know, the user and literally proxies the traffic through the proxy to the real website. What's fun is that as a bad guy, if you do this, you can see everything the user is doing in plain text. You know, you can see their emails, you can see everything in real time. It's fun, it's real fun stuff. Now, as an exercise to the reader, there's also so many alternative reverse proxy softwares out there. Evil Jinx 2 is just one of them that you can try to use. So here's an example that I found. Murena and Necro Browser, those are two pieces that are supposed to work together in order to set up a reverse proxy. And then there's also like Evil Proxy. There's so many out there that make it so easy for somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with like programming or super technical stuff to just go in and set it up themselves. It's like, it's dumb easy now. Let's talk about submitting. What are we on time? 5 minutes?
That's 440.
440? Okay, cool. All right, so I'll make this quick. Mitigations for MFA attacks, right? User education, right? Make sure that your users aren't just clicking on stuff, okay? Don't let them do that. Educate them on the risks of MFA and the different MFA types out there. Avoid SMS where possible. Especially if it's higher risk, what makes me so mad is that banks still use SMS, and I kind of get why, like I get that users are just used to that, but man, can we please stop that, right? Use security keys in high-risk scenarios. As you saw with that reverse proxy, trying to phish the security key didn't really work. And we'll talk a little bit more about why. And use rate limiting, right? So for that MFA bombing attack, guess what? You just rate limited that, then it would have helped prevent the attack. And also block any suspicious activity. If it looks like it's wrong, it's probably wrong. And there's an example of a YubiKey, and you guys got Titan keys. I know some of this feels like a reiteration of Andrew's talk from this morning because we're both in IAM. So yeah, not this morning, but yeah. And now let's talk about real quick, why can't you phish a security key? You cannot phish a security key because the authentication for a security key is origin bound. So when you try to authenticate with a security key through a reverse proxy, you know, the original web application is like, yo, that's not github.com. Fuck, no, I'm kidding. Like, but it's like, the fuck, you know, I can't let you in. I can't let you in, okay? Because it's not from the right origin. And yeah, I'll keep it quick. Credit where credit's due. There's this really great book by Roger A. Grimes. Hey, Roger, if you're watching this, come out with another edition of the book because it's great. Slidesgo.com for the slides design because I'm not a graphic designer. And for more resources, visit my website. I will be putting a write-up on how to set up your own phishing server yourself, like a detailed technical write-up, and you can follow it and set one up yourself. Now it's question time. I know we don't have a lot of time, but you can find me or message me on LinkedIn or whatever, and but we'll try to make this quick. All right, any questions? What's up? Throw them at me now. Nothing? Wow, what's up?
What are your thoughts on like multi-word passwords?
On multi-word passwords, depends on how long the password is, if it's a common phrase. Like 5 like random words. I mean, honestly, I dig them. By dots, I dig them in a way if they're easy because they're a little easier to remember and they are longer and harder to crack. I think I do kind of, in my opinion, I do like the requirement where like if your password is at least 15 characters long, like what GitHub does, I do like that because having to type special characters is so annoying, and it is really nice to be able to just memorize a string of words and put that in as opposed to having to memorize like Z, capital X, 1 at $_ P 3 M, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so much better. So yeah, I dig them. I like them. I vibe with them. I think they're a vibe. They're a good vibe. Good vibes only here. Any other questions? Any questions on Tuva? That's so surprising. Come on, guys. Where are you? Oh, my cat's names? Oh yeah, thank you. I'm glad you guys like the talk. So my cat's name is Honey. She's a calico kitten. She's like 10 weeks old. And then we have 2 French bulldogs named Buxio and Bucknox. So best friend and little brother. Yeah. Gets it, yeah. You know, because best friend, he's the older one, Booknonk is the little one because best friend was lonely, and now he like acts like he hates him. I don't know. These animals have the same dynamics as like real human siblings. It's hilarious. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm like